Yes people, welcome back to another video of CMDAV, and we're doing another story time today. We are doing Michaela White story time today. Make sure you leave a like, make sure you comment what you want to see, and make sure you subscribe. Let's get into the vid. We first see Michaela in episode 12 of season 3. Jasmine asks her what she likes about herself and she's unsure. Bolton says she has a nice ass. She throws a paper at his head and gets gassed a bit. In the practice interview, she says she likes to hang around the corner shop with her friend. She wants to go out with Robert Kaczynski and Sean Slater. At the start of episode 14, Michaela and her two friends are trying to steal some CDs or DVDs from someone's car. The windows open a little bit and Michaela puts her arm through but can't reach. They see a younger kid called Shane grab him and put his hand through the car since he's smaller. Michaela slaps him up a little bit so he listens. Jasmine sees this and runs over and shoves Michaela away from Shane. She claims that they were only messing around. Michaela denies hitting him and tells Jasmine to ask Shane. Jasmine tells Michaela that Tom will have a word with her in school. Now at school, Michaela and her two followers approach Shane. She says she's beginning to like him and gives him some sweets and leaves him to it. In Tom's office, Michaela explains Jasmine went mental and threw her against the car. Michaela plays the role well, even fake crying, which Tom doesn't believe. Michaela comes across Jasmine with a smirk. Jasmine walks the other way, but Michaela calls out. Shane says hello. Her and her side women start laughing. This triggers Jasmine, who turns and says she might have fooled everyone else, but she didn't fool her. Jasmine calls Michaela a liar and a coward, and then she calls out her side women. When Jasmine leaves, Michaela tells side woman 1 to punch her. Michaela then asks if both saw Jasmine punch her. In Rachel's office, she's saying it's too easy to accuse teachers of assault without any explanation. Michaela isn't having it and says she'll just go straight to the police instead. Michaela says Jasmine should be sacked for what she did. Rachel tells the side women to go back to their class and Michaela to wait in the office. With her back turned, she's bare happy with the problem she's caused. In a classroom, Eddie tells the trio to tread carefully, and if they're just doing it to get back at Jasmine, they'll find out. He says providing false statement is a criminal act. Side woman number 1 is starting to defend Jasmine. She's saying that she could actually lose her job and it'll be their fault. Side woman number 1 is scared because she thinks that they'll find out they were lying. Michaela pressures her, saying that they can only find out if someone says, and threatens her. Near the end of the episode, Jasmine walks past Michaela and co while she grins as the other two seem to feel bad. In episode 15, Michaela goes to Mika in the toilet and asks her about Tom not telling her about Matt being gay. Mika is lost but not interested. Michaela goes on to say unless Tom is gay too. She crosses the line speaking about Izzy, saying that she was a bit of a dykey and suggests they were covering for each other. Mika gets angry and tells her to keep her mum out of it. Michaela steps up and says, "Oh what? Right now it's 3v1 because her side women are there too, but Mika's not phased. She says Michaela will drop them as soon as she had to." Mika knows they lied just to get Jasmine suspended, and Michaela says it's not worth it and dips. Matt singles out Paul and Michaela in class, saying it's to do with them finding out he's gay, but they said it's to do with Dom. Michaela asks if Matt tried it on with Dom and that's why he let him off. Matt is shocked from the allegation. Michaela says Dom can get the police on him, and if Dom tells on Matt then he's out, just like Jasmine. She calls him a perv. Michaela is seen walking into the meeting with the board to decide Jasmine's future. Eddie shows the members of the board a report from the school council listing over 40 incidents of Michaela bullying people. Michaela is shocked, but I'm even more shocked as to how much of a menace she was, I can't lie. She held a kid's head underwater until he nearly passed out, made a year 9 boy eat grass and moo, as well as other examples. Eddie highlights that Michaela is a thug and a bully. She looks at her dad and says it was one of the side women and she just happened to be there. Michaela says it doesn't matter since Jasmine hit her and she had a bruise to prove it. Saved by the bell. Jasmine gets to the meeting where on the way one of the side women, aka Sasha, admits to hitting her. In the final episode of season 3, before the spelling bee, Michaela approaches a few guys from the opposing school. She tricks them into betting against Waterloo Road. She gets pressured by them after the spelling bee, which Waterloo Road win. They demand their money back and don't let her leave. She acts like she's going to give the money, kicks one brother in the balls, and then runs past their head teacher who stops the boys. We then see Michaela unharmed watching the fire with Danielle, Alicia and Carla. In season 4, we first see Michaela in episode 3. In Maka's lesson, she says what is he on about when he's talking about mariculture. Davina tells her not to be rude, but Maka encourages questions. In episode 5, Michaela, Bolton and Paul walk into school. Michaela is annoyed as she thinks that the school is treating them like junkies. Bolton says he's not doing anything since he's serious with his boxing, whilst Michaela says anyone who blames her will get their finger pointing back at them. Bolton asks what she's on about and she says it's amazing what you can find on the internet. Michaela goes to Philip thanking him for the link he sent her. She goes on to say it must be hard for him since his mum and Eddie are doing a thing. Phil says Eddie's called her. Michaela prints out the photo from the link Philip sent and gives it out to everyone, which is a picture of Eddie protesting legalization of weed. In episode 7, everyone is supportive of Danielle and they all protest on the roof for her to stay in school and not be homeschooled. Eddie says not to lie. Michaela asks if Danielle's dad actually beat her up, then why hasn't she gone to the police or social services, whilst Alicia asks to see the bruises. Danielle admits it's not true and Michaela is annoyed, saying that they're all on the roof because Danielle's angry with her dad. She leads everyone off the roof. In episode 12, Michaela approaches Carla saying that Carla can make serious money from her artwork and she basically says she can become her agent. Michaela convinces Carla to showcase her work and then sell other art and split the profits. Michaela silences Carla when speaking to Alicia and Danielle so they don't know her plan. As soon as Kim leaves the art room, Michaela takes Carla to the toilet to sketch people for £2.50, promising to split £1.25 each. Lauren pressures Carla after not liking it, and this prompts Michaela to come back into the toilet. Carla says she doesn't want to do it anymore, asking to stop, but Michaela says to shut up and carry on. Carla goes back to the art room, confronting Michaela, saying that the art is hers. She says it was just to show people how good they are, nothing about selling them. Carla demands them back right now. This is interrupted by Lauren scrapping Michaela. Eddie breaks up the fight and says Michaela is in year 11, but Michaela says Lauren started it. Lauren explains Michaela making Carla sit in the toilet drawing people. At the end of the episode, Kim and Eddie punish Michaela with a week's worth of detention. Kim calls Michaela a coward for picking on people who can't stand up for themselves. In sex education discussions, Michaela and Bolton go back and forth. Bolton says girls make guys wait ages and guys have to do the hard work, whilst Michaela says guys think with their dicks and not their heads. Kim says being responsible stops the spread of STIs and tells Bolton to stop making fun of Michaela. This prompts Michaela to say it's okay since she knows she hasn't got anything since she's a virgin and it's her choice and it's her business. At Bolton's house party, he and Michaela are looking cozy, but he just wants to get back at Janice. In episode 15, Tom organises the girls' football team to get better by doing army drills to improve their teamwork. Janice is thinking that joining the army is to get with guys. Danielle says it's not, and Janice asks why do people join. Michaela says to defend the country, and she's thinking that she'll actually get stuck in for this army coaching thing. She's then joined by Bolton with these two looking cozy. Janice expresses how Michaela can't follow orders, but she claps back saying that she can give them. Michaela asks how Janice's twins are going to cope jumping over the wall. Janice says get stuff, and Michaela says that's what the doctor did. Bolton tells Michaela to shut up, but she just says she's joking around anyways. Michaela is told by Tom this isn't going to be a day off, as earlier she made a comment about rather doing the army stuff than revision. Michaela says she didn't realise Tom needed to call his army friends to straighten them out. Tom hits back saying that she should be on the receiving end of God being aggressive for one. Tom explains it's a good chance for her to show what she's made of and to make a good impression. She says she'll do her best, but rolls her eyes with her back towards Tom. During the demo, all the girls start to bug out saying that they smell something. The army captain Andy tells everyone to come out and he finds a stink bomb. Tom is getting on to everyone for doing the stink bomb. Janice says they didn't, but she knows a slapper who did, pointing at Michaela. Michaela violates Janice, poking fun of her surgery, telling her she has an extension built for boys to look at her. Tom tells both of them to shut up and Andy makes them clean the truck. Later on, after Tom has left, Andy asks somebody to go get him. Michaela and Janice offer, but Andy picks Janice to go. Janice laughs and says you can't trust some people. This leads to Michaela turning on the hose and wetting up Janice, leading to them scrapping. Andy and his team break up the fight. Rachel tells Michaela and Janice to get inside. In the cooler, Rachel asks if they know how much they're paying Andy and his group to work with them, and she says they're not paying them a single penny. Michaela says they're not doing it for nothing and they want kids to sign up, brainwashing them to think it's fun and they don't have to do it if they don't want to. Rachel says she's right, and she says she doesn't know if she wanted to take them out there even if they did want to continue. Before Rachel leaves, Michaela stops her, apologizes and takes the blame for the incident, then apologizes to Janice. Michaela apologizes to Andy, claiming she wants to join in as a team. Tom tells Michaela she's made him look like a prat and he's allergic to wasted potential. Tom wants her to see that there's more to life working with people. Everyone watches Tom get punched by Rose and Michaela laughs, telling him she thought she made him look like a prat. Later on, in the assault race versus the teachers, Michaela says she'll go last since she can run faster than anyone else. Her argument being that they should play to their strengths and they'll easily win. Michaela sneaks into the cafeteria, she takes some chili powder and puts it in a plastic bag. Andy explains the rules and says the teachers versus students will happen first, then his army will demonstrate after. Michaela deliberately loses so she can go under the net slowly and be the last one there to drop the chili powder on the grass. After this, Michaela watches on as Andy goes into the chili powder, happily screaming that they beat the army. Andy gets onto everyone and steps in front of Michaela. Michaela says she didn't do anything, but Andy didn't say anything and says she's feeling guilty about something. Andy says you can spot a liar from a mile away. Michaela says they're all liars and walks away. Danielle says it couldn't have been Michaela since her brother was in the army who fought in Iraq. Tom catches up with Michaela. He asks why she made everyone look like idiots. Michaela says the army are idiots. Tom tells her that the soldiers were impressed with her, but she doesn't care. He asks about her brother in the army. She explains he got kicked out and was so messed up he couldn't make it through rehabilitation process. She wanted them to know how it feels. Tom tells her Andy and his team didn't deserve that and sends her to the cooler. Andy visits her in the cooler and his first question was what unit was he in, referring to her brother. Andy says the unit was amazing and no wonder he was devastated to be out. Andy tells her that her brother knew the risk when signing up for the army. However, he suggests that Michaela could take his place since her brother is a liability and compliments her with what she did today. Michaela apologizes. Andy tells her she has brains and iron will and fought for what she believed in. He says if she wants to apply, let him know. In episode 16, Michaela tells Jem that her uncle had a Porsche like hers but felt like it was a toy and got a Merc instead. In Jem's house, Bolton steals a couple of bottles of champagne and gets away with Michaela, Paul and Philip. They later get into a room with a private pool and start to mess around. Michaela and others start to shout at Jem when Grantley gets a heart attack and they say teachers are supposed to have first aid. For the last few episodes, Michaela is quite quiet, but she's there in episode 20 supporting the choir and the final scene with Bolton looking cozy. Michaela returns to school for the 5th season. This is where the merger happens with John Foster's. At the start of episode 1, Michaela, Bolton and Paul look at the John Foster's kids and call them snobs. In the assembly, Rachel encourages everyone to stand up and mix, but Michaela and Bolton laugh and stay seated. Amy says hello to Bolton and Michaela is looking a bit jealous. Max comes in and has an introduction speech to the new Waterloo Road and Michaela says out loud blah blah blah. Max tells Michaela she's either stupid or pretending to be. Michaela says she's not stupid, but he tells her next time to speak when she's spoken to. Max passes Michaela on the stairs and asks for her name. He tells her she's got spirit and she's not afraid to voice her thoughts, but pick the right time and the right place. Michaela says it feels like John Foster's are taking over, but Max explains it's hard on both sides. Michaela agrees to give it a chance. In Helen's class, Carla asks an innocent question, but Helen's response prompts Michaela to ask if they're getting slagged off. Helen is trying to get the attention of the whole class. Michaela asks whether she's going to let Lindsay get away with disobeying her since she's posh. Michaela suggests they should all walk out. Michaela calls Helen by her first name in a mocking manner. Helen says never mind what her name is and she knows what her name is, Michaela White, loudmouth. Michaela asks who she's calling a loudmouth and Helen says her, and an empty-headed one at that. This prompts Michaela to stand up to walk towards Helen to pressure her. This tells Michaela to sit down and shut up, distracting Michaela from Helen. Michaela says who do you think you're talking to, posh slag? Out of nowhere, Lindsay starts beating up Michaela. Tom breaks up the fight and sends them to Rachel's office. Lindsay's begging for Rachel not to call her parents and Michaela is agreeing, saying to call the police instead since she's not safe in the school. Lindsay apologizes for assaulting Michaela and Michaela says she should be. Max tells Michaela she retaliated and needs to apologize and grabs her and forces her to apologize. Amy instigates trouble with the JF squad by screaming their school name. Michaela sees and tells them to shut up and they don't want them there. This leads to the two skippers, Lindsay for JF and Michaela for Waterloo Road, starting the biggest brawl. Helen goes to stop Michaela and Lindsay from behind Michaela and receives an unintentional backhand. In the call is round 2 of the brawl, but now it's just all verbal. Max shuts everyone up though. At the start of episode 2, Michaela goes up to Lindsay saying she bet she doesn't feel big about herself since now everyone heard about her dad being killed by her mum. Bolton runs over to kiss her. Amy says some comments and Bolton tells Michaela not to rise to it since she's just jealous of her. She tells Lindsay that Waterloo Road rules and that Lindsay belongs in prison with her murdering mum. She slightly wasn't wrong about that one. Michaela walks into Bolton and Paul's conversation where Bolton seems gas. Paul leaves and Michaela asks what he's bigging himself up about. Bolton plays it off saying it was nothing. Helen goes to Michaela in the common room asking about what happened on the stairs. Michaela says she fell. Helen says she would have loved to push her. She hit her in the playground and everyone knows she's got it in for her. Helen tries to send threats by saying that she's lucky she told Max she forgot what happened, but her memory can always come back. Helen hands Michaela a note and says it best be the end of it and Michaela is baffed. Danielle and Alicia tell Michaela of the news and she immediately defends Bolton saying he wouldn't rape anyone. She claims he's been framed since JF trying to get him if they can't get her. Shows them the note that Helen thinks they sent and says they're trying to set them up. Michaela leaves to go sort Amy out. Michaela goes into the pastoral care office, demands the truth and isn't leaving until she gets it. Amy says she's not lying. Michaela goes on to say Bolton would have fancied a snotty little cow like Amy. Amy claps back saying he was snogging her face off and he was hot for her. This leads to Michaela storming off immediately. Paul tells Michaela that it must have been a mistake since Bolton would not have done this. Michaela recalls when Bolton was bigging himself up earlier. Michaela's crying in the toilet when she got a text from Bolton saying it's a lie what she's heard. In class, Lindsay writes on the board Bolton is a rapist and asks if it's true or not. Trying to get a reaction from Michaela, but she's not responding. Bolton rushes into the classroom and says it was a lie and he's going to prove it. Michaela says she's finished with him. At the end of the episode, Michaela catches up with Bolton telling him she feels bad because she knew it was JF trying to set her up. She says she's going to sort it, but Bolton grabs her and tells her to leave it because he doesn't want any more trouble. Bolton tells her all of this happened because of her stupid girl gang nonsense. He breaks up with her and leaves her with tears falling down. In episode 3, Michaela sees Siobhan in the toilet and tells her that the tattoos are against school rules. She realizes that it's a JF tattoo which all of them have. Michaela calls it lame whilst Siobhan refused this whilst battling tears from the pain, explaining loyalty. Michaela asks if Lindsay made the deal, which is immediately shut down. Siobhan says she's not sure about it though. Michaela tells Kim that someone she knows has been forced to do something really bad and she's not usually a snake, but she knows it's not right. Later on, Michaela, Sam and Lauren watch Lindsay, Siobhan and Amy walk towards them. Rachel and Kim watch them so they can't do anything, but Lindsay says they'll get theirs. In episode 4, Michaela rounds up the troops telling them that Rachel let Lindsay off for what she did to Carla. She says that if Rachel's not going to do it, then they'll do it and punish her 10 times worse. Sam says they'll get done on school grounds, but Michaela's planning to do it after school. Later on, Michaela and Sam are discussing final plans for Lindy, but interrupted by Carla, who was the victim to her last attack. Carla tells them she doesn't want any more trouble and Sam says she won't have any more trouble. Michaela says they're going to beat her up on the way home and it's for Carla. After school in one alleyway, Michaela, Sam and Lauren and others are waiting for them to come through. Sam asks if they're going to hurt Em, but it's only Lindsay Michaela wants. When the four walk past, Michaela and her gang come through. Lindsay says Michaela needs all her friends, whilst Michaela claps back saying it's coming from someone who beats up special needs kids. She grabs Lindsay and Em says to stop, but Michaela shoves her out the way. She's full on aggro mode, says she can't get away with touching one of them and gives her a punch for Carla, then one for herself and then walks away. Never turn your back on your opponent. Lindsay moves like Undertaker, gets out rapidly and they start grappling. Chris and Rachel break up the fight and send them all home. Michaela says it's not over and Rachel says it is over and she'll kick her out of school, which means no exams, no future future before she can even blink. In episode 5, Michaela isn't trying to listen to Ruby. Ruby brings her into her office and Michaela isn't trying to impress the John Foster's lot. Ruby says whether she likes it or not, they're all Waterloo Road now. Michaela says regardless of what they say, they're acting like they're better than them. Ruby says it's because they are, and if she's gonna act like a child, she's gonna treat her like one. No chill by Ruby. Ruby wants her to present herself well, but Michaela isn't having it. She explains it doesn't matter where she comes from, she should demand the same standards as the rest of them and she needs to work a little bit harder for them. Ruby says she can stay in the office and sulk or prove she is good enough to the John Foster's people. Michaela does the latter. Later on, everyone witnesses Ruby and her husband John arguing and reveal that their house is about to be repossessed. Ruby comes back to class and acts like nothing happened and tells everyone to carry on. Vicky tells her that they can't because half the ingredients are gone which Michaela stole. Ruby says it's £150 per pot. Michaela says she hopes she get the receipt because she might need her money back, resulting in Paul and Bolton laughing. Michaela says she needs to make some cutbacks. Ruby agrees, saying her life is one big joke and starts to throw everything on the floor. Max comes in, kicks everyone out and tells Michaela to stay and clean the mess up. Michaela is annoyed having to clean up after Ruby. Ruby is unresponsive, so Michaela just carries on. Michaela gives back the pots and says she can get money off them. First thing Ruby says in a minute, £9.50, caviar substitutes, £4.75 a jar. She wouldn't trust them with the real thing. Ruby asks if she had any idea what she has to deal with. Michaela responds yes, since everyone heard them out there. Michaela says you wouldn't see her freaking out like that when Bolton ended things with her. Ruby says it's not serious and it's a teenage breakup and that she lost everything. Michaela reminds her what she said in the morning. It didn't matter what you had or where you come from, and questions whether she actually meant it. Ruby tells Michaela to do her job properly, but Michaela says Ruby made the mess. Ruby says that Max asked Michaela to clean it and not her. Michaela claps back, saying Max asked her to make the lunch. Ruby acts like it's impossible, but Michaela tells her to give up and prove she's no better than the rest of them. Rachel asks what happens when Ruby decides to make this lunch with the leftovers. Rose tells Ruby it will be hard with the leftovers since delivery comes tomorrow. Ruby starts to slouch, which prompts Michaela to start standing straight. This in turn prompts Ruby to realize that it's not all lost, stands straight and says they'll have to make do with what's available. In episode 7, Helen sends Michaela to the cooler, but after changing her mind from sending Bolton. Michaela says she doesn't mind going to the cooler since she might actually learn something in the cooler. While leaving, she calls on Danielle and Alicia, who leave the room too. Michaela accidentally bumps into Cassie, who pushes her for no reason, which leads to a fight which Kim breaks up. Cassie says she was defending herself since Michaela punched her, but Michaela is confused because even I'm confused. Kim thinks Michaela is still part of the gangs, but Michaela says Cassie is lying and she didn't do anything to her. She's annoyed for doing something she never did. In the toilets, Michaela confronts Cassie, saying she never touched her. Cassie says she heard her and one of them told her to. Michaela asks one of who, and Cassie says she's not sure. In the intervention, Kim tries to find common ground between JF and Waterloo Road and wants a new start. Later on, Amy knocks Michaela's food out of her hand. She says, "You don't want that." Rachel stops anything from escalating and asks if they've heard anything from Kim's intervention. Michaela says regardless whether you're innocent or not, you're gonna get done. Michaela and Alicia tell Bolton and Paul about a party and text him their address, which is Helen's house. Tom comes and kicks everyone out. Michaela plays the flute for an audition for the talent show in episode 8 and surprises Grantley with her performance. At the start of episode 9, Michaela asks Lindsay if she's going to another funeral. Ross tells her to leave it as she's going to court. Michaela says she would rather go to court than double English. All of a sudden, Michaela takes off her tie since she's in public and outside of the court and is followed by Ross. Ross says Lindsay would need a friendly face too. Ross and Michaela witnessed the whole court hearing. Michaela explains to Rachel that they came thinking it would be a laugh. Michaela says she feels so awful and Rachel tells them not to mention anything that they heard in court. She sends them back to school, but Michaela tells Ross if she's going back to school, she's going back on her one since she can't face it. Ross says she's going back in the courtroom and doesn't care whether Rachel goes mad. Michaela witnesses Lindsay admitting killing her dad. Whilst Lindsay is in the back of a police car, Michaela runs over to talk. She apologizes about all the fights and gang stuff, saying it was stupid. She tries to say it's not right and they want to get her out. In episode 10, Michaela has a petition to free Lindsay. Lauren doesn't want to sign it because of everything she did. Michaela makes it clear to Lauren, Siobhan and Amy that the gang business is over. Then Lauren signs it. Michaela sees Lindsay's mum and Em and asks about Lindsay. Michaela shows them the petition, which they are grateful for. Michaela does a flute performance again for the talent show. Near the end of the episode, Michaela forces Amy and Siobhan to sign the petition and make sure that they understand that the gangs are over. In episode 13, Philip tells Michaela about the scheme Chris created for the Oxbridge candidates, being himself and Roz, where they get special treatment. Michaela asks Chris if she can join and he hesitates and says he's not sure whether she'll benefit from it. His reason being is hardcore academic stuff. He ultimately refuses to let her on the scheme. She tells Kim Chris excluded her from the APU scheme. Michaela rounds up everyone from her year to protest for equality. This leads to interviews for people to be on the scheme. Michaela says she wants a better life and uni will provide that. I don't know if you guys remember the advert back in the day, BBC One, but she throws the ball and Chris says it's a bomb, and I remember that from that advert. Michaela gets through and says she's going to uni, but Chris tells her to relax and they have another part which he just made up on the spot. She tells Kim and Kim gives her advice to make the most of her opportunity. The exam pressures her and it leads to her asking for lots of paper, restarting her work. She bugs out when Philip gets annoyed and leaves. She scrunches the paper up and says Chris was right saying she's second rate. She says Kim lied to her, making her think she could do it. Kim comforts her, saying that today was a good learning curve. She tells her she has ambition and that's half what you need to get success. Michaela says she doesn't want to go to university anymore. In episode 15, Danielle, Alicia and Michaela talk to Adam about the same gig they went to the night before. He gives them breakfast sandwiches since they're hungover. Alicia asks Michaela later on if she's feeling any better. She's wondering how Adam isn't hungover, and they're laughing about his dance move, which is overheard by Rachel. In science, Chris tells everyone Finn is taking over and asks for homework. Michaela says does he really think she's going to listen to him. She tells Finn she didn't do it and he tries to send her to the cooler, but everyone mocks him. She asks how's he going to do that, and Finn says he'll grab her by her greasy hair. Michaela squares up to him and says to try it. Finn runs away because he gets pressured. In episode 18, Michaela retrieves notes about Roz from Philip. She takes it to Danielle and Alicia and they realise he cusses them all out. She hands out leaflets about Philip and they all call him a pig. Bolton defends Philip, saying it's not deep, but Michaela doesn't want to hear what he's saying and slaps him. Rachel breaks up the argument, saying it's bullying, but Michaela says it's not about Philip, it's about all boys. Rachel suggests they have a debate instead. In episode 19, Bolton asks Michaela to the prom for old time's sake, but she turns him down quicker than he can blink. Michaela says Paul's well in with Sam, but Bolton says they're just using each other. She calls him a donut and tells him to ask out Sam, but he denies wanting to go with her. Michaela agrees to go with Bolton to the prom. In the final episode, Michaela is helping to set up the prom, but we don't see much of her. We last see Michaela entering the prom with Alicia, Danielle and Carla, and they're shocked to see Bolton actually took her advice and rightly gassed when he enters the prom with Sam. That is the end of the video. Thank you for watching. I just deeped it from making this video. Michaela really carried season 5 of Waterloo Road. No one can tell me any different, but let me know your thoughts in the comments. Drop a like, drop a comment, drop a subscribe. Stay safe my people. Peace.